and all dear participants. Today's webinar is meant to focus on important aspects of job work under GST. As you all know, we have got a very short definition of job work under Section 268 of the GST Act to mean process or treatment undertaken by a person on any other registered person's goods, and the term job worker shall be construed accordingly. It is a very short definition. Undertaking a process or treatment on goods belonging to a registered person. So first important aspect which we have to keep in mind is, for a job work under GST, it has to be a process undertaken for a principal who is registered under the GST law. Though the definition appears to be so short, it is involving critical issues of interpretation.
Please unmute the speaker, Chairman.
विनोद भाव unmute करो. Chairman.
Along with
Now it is unmuted.
45 of the rules prescribing a procedure to be undertaken for the purpose of carrying out the activities relating to job work. Procedural aspects as such does not require much interpretation, and therefore the real challenge is of interpreting and understanding the scope of job work under GST. Today we have the next speaker, Mr. Kuntal Parikh, and I'm sure he will enlighten us on various facets of this subject. And therefore, I would request him to share his views and would reserve my comments after he completes his presentation. Kuntal.
All the co-hosts, please mute yourself because we are disturbing others. And let only speaker speak. You can mute yourself on your own, please, co-host. Do it.
Hello. Speaker sir.
Hello.
Yeah. Kuntal bhai, floor is yours.
Good afternoon,
Sir,
everyone.
carry on, sir. Carry on, sir.
Yes. Actually, when today's subject was given to me, as rightly said by my chairman, that it is a very short definition. The subject was itself a challenge to speak about, to interact for 60 minutes or more than that for about the subject. In a way, like it was an Indian last wicket pair on the fifth day of the test match on a seaming wicket to stay on for entire day, and at the same time have to make interesting also for the spectators to get their time worth. I was skeptical to take up this challenge, but then I realized I may be the 11th player, but at the crease I have champion batsman, today's chairman like Shri Nayan Bhai Sheth, and our coach Insight, who is the chief guest of the Honorable Commissioner of the State Tax. So all I have to do is to look up the inspiration and come out victorious, and decided to go ahead. I am thankful to the Shri Gupta sir, Honorable Chief Commissioner of the State Tax, for accepting our invitation during his busy schedule and such pandemic period. I am also thankful to National President Nikita Madam, Secretary General Shri Samir Bhai Jani, Chairman of AIFTP West Zone Bhaskar Bhai Patel, President of GSTPM Shri Dinesh Bhai Tamde, my Chairman Shri Nayan Bhai Sheth, for giving me this opportunity. Can I share my screen, host? Bhavya Bhai?
You can share. Yes, you can share.
Bhavya Bhai, spotlight on
Yeah.
Kuntal also.
So, understanding the meaning of the job work under the GST, what was the background and how it is relevant to know before going to understand the definition of the job work under the GST, what was under the central excise law and the service tax law. The definition of manufacture, as you all aware that it was the exhaustive. The definition of the excise law said incidental or ancillary, any process which is incidental or ancillary to the completion of manufactured product. And if a new commercial product coming into existence, then that process shall be treated as a manufacturing. The process may add the value to the goods. New commercial commodity may come into existence. Then in that case, such process may be treated as a manufacturing activity. Not necessarily all the process which adds the value to the existing goods would amount to manufacturing. For example, if we take the example of pipes, and if the pipes, the bare pipes are being coated or if they are galvanized, it will be adding the value, though it remains the pipe, but it will be having its commercial identity different than the earlier one. Then in that case, such process may be treated as a manufacturing process. But at the same time, if the process which only changes the shape or the size of the product, then this process may not be treated as a manufacturing activity under the excise law, because it is not bringing into existence a new commercial commodity. For example, the same pipes are being cut into small pieces, then it is not the new commodity, though it's a pipe, it remains the pipe only. So such process may not be treated as a manufacturing activity, and it will be out of the purview of the excise law. So what happened? The central government was not getting the tax on the activities which are not treated as a manufacturing activity, though they were the processes. Under the excise law, therefore, the job workers were treated as a manufacturer, because the levy was on the activity of manufacturing. While under the GST, the levy is on the supply of the goods, not on the manufacturing activity. And therefore, the definition of job work is much different than what was in earlier law. What happened if the process is not a manufacturing process? Then the government was not getting the tax on that activity under the excise law. So under the service tax law, these such process were covered under the business auxiliary services under section 65 subsection 19. So the process which were not treated as a manufacturing activity and not subject to excise duty were covered as were considered to be services and were subject to service tax. Under the GST, the definition says job work means any treatment or process undertaken by a person on goods belonging to another registered person. So there has to be a treatment or the process on a goods which belong to another registered person. So what very important is whether to treat the activity or the process to be considered as job work. Does it require that the goods must be belong to the principal who is the registered person? So Chairman sir, here what is the relevance of the registered person? As I understand, and we will discuss later, that whether the registered person require the consideration whether to consider whether activity is job work or not. If the principal may be unregistered and the process and the treatment being carried out by the job worker, then can't it be said it is a job work process, because the definition say it is a registered person? In my view, sir, it is registered person to determine the rate of tax when the job work activity is carried out. We will discuss about this on later stage. If Any other interpretation or the relevance to this term registered person is required, kindly enlighten us on this aspect. What is the scope? There has to be a treatment or process must be carried out on the goods of the another person. That another person is the principal. So to treat the person who is carrying out the activity of treatment or the process, that must be on the goods which belong to another person who is the principal. What is the scope of the treatment and the process? So what is the process? In Ahmedabad Tribunal in case of 2008 12 STR 504 Sestat Ahmedabad has discussed the scope of the process comparing with the scope of the manufacturing. The scope of process is very wide than the manufacturing. All process may not be treated as a manufacturing process as we discussed earlier, but the manufacturing always include the process. What is the treatment? Treatment means which bringing the goods into some another form, like as I gave the example of coating the pipe. So giving a coat to the pipe, the bare pipe is a treatment given to the pipe. So such treatment may also be treated as a job work activity under the GST law, though it is not bringing into existence new commercial product. So any treatment or the process which is given on the any goods belonging to another person, it will be considered as job work. So in my view, the term job work is much wider than what was under the excise law. Another very important determinative test is that the goods must belong to the principal. It means that the principal has to be owner of the goods. If any treatment is being carried out on the goods which belong to the job worker, then it cannot be treated as a job work services. The principal has to be registered, as I stated that the definition says the principal has to be registered. What is the relevant for this terminology is to be discussed later. Inputs includes the intermediate products also. It means that if during the process of manufacturing or any other treatment, if any intermediate goods are coming into existence and those intermediate goods are sent for any further treatment or the process to the premises of the service provider who is the job worker, then such intermediate products can also be considered in the purview of the definition job work. Important advance authority which should be considered at this stage is the SB Resellers Private Limited 2019-27 GSTL of Maharashtra Authority. The issue in this case was the job worker was manufacturing the sugar mill rolls out of the old roller, bare shaft and the beams provided under the chalan by the principal. The meaning that the job worker was carrying out the manufacturing process on the old roller, bare shaft, beams provided by the principal to the job worker. Job worker was manufacturing his shell for utilizing the sugar mill roller and using his skill and the labor. The issue before the authority was that whether the process of conversion of bare shaft or beams into the sugar mill rolls using the skill and the labor and the shells which are being manufactured by the job work himself could be treated as a supply of goods or the services covered under the definition of job work services. The authority relied upon the landmark judgment of the Supreme Court Prestige Engineering India 1994 73 ELT 497, wherein the Supreme Court dealt with the term job worker as a manufacturer under the excise law, where the Supreme Court gave the example that if any fabric is provided to the job worker and the job worker using buttons, thread, minimal commodities for manufacturing or processing any goods, then that may be permissible as a job worker and the job worker shall be considered as a manufacturer job worker. Applying this test, the authority held here that if minimal product, the nature of the inputs are provided by the principal to the job worker to carry out any process is a determinative test. So what is the nature of addition made by the job worker during carrying out any treatment or the process? That is the test which is taken by the advance authority in this case and came to the conclusion that in this case processing of and making the sugar mill rollers, the maximum inputs are being used by the job worker himself. Job worker manufactures his shells himself only the old bare or shafts provided by the principal and on which the new rollers are being manufactured, and that is why it is not a job work services, though the process is covered by the definition of job work, but what is being supplied by the job worker to the principal is a new commodity and completely different, where maximum substantial inputs are being provided by the job worker, and therefore it is a supply of goods and the rate of tax of the goods shall be levied on this activity. So what is important in this authority, that though it is treated as a job work activity, it was treated as a supply of goods on the basis that the nature of the additions made by the job worker is substantial in nature. So that is the relevant factor given by this advanced authority in this in this ruling. So the issue is whether actually it's correct or not. In my view, to some extent it corrects, but it requires, because as we are aware that the authority is not binding for every assessee. Very same Supreme Court example is considered, and if it is looked at from another view, that if the principal has provided only buttons and the thread, and the job worker making the shirt out of that his own fabric, then that treatment should be treated as a manufacture in the process. So applying this test here under the GST law, any kind of principle, even if it is very minimal, 1% or 2% out of the entire product, then is it a determinative factor to determine whether the process is a job work or not? That the time will decide by the authorities. We can certainly discuss about such issues. Completely contrary issue came in case of the Crown Beers India Private Limited, 2019-27 GSTL 468, Maharashtra Advanced Authority of Advance Ruling, Appellate Authority of Advance Ruling. Generally, in alcohol beverage industries, the brand name owner belongs to a one person and who enters into the contract with the manufacturing company. And as per their requirement, they get their alcohol beverages manufactured through the job worker. So the issue here was that the applicant's query was that all the materials for manufacturing beer bottles are being purchased by his job worker. Job worker purchases from the market the goods as per the specifications given by the principal. The ownership of those inputs belong to the job worker. And at last, when the job worker supplies these beer bottles in resold condition, only the goods are being supplied by the job worker to the principal, and that therefore it is a supply of the alcohol beverages for the human consumption and out of the purview of the GST law. That was the submissions made by the applicant in this case. The authority came with the ruling that as per the agreement, though the inputs were being bought by the job worker, but ultimately the job worker was reimbursing this amount from the principal, and therefore it is a supply of services as a job worker under the GST law, and therefore it is subject to the tax leviable on the services. It is covered by the GST law. It is not a supply of goods. In my view, to determine such issues, what was the agreement and the contract between the parties plays very major role to determine whether it is a supply of goods or it is supply of services. Here in this case, admittedly the goods were belong to the job worker. It was the ownership of the inputs was never passed to the principal. Only the specifications and the list of the suppliers from whom the job worker can buy these inputs for manufacturing the beer bottles, that cannot be considered as supply of goods to treat as a supply of services. So in my view, this authority this ruling may be reconsidered from this aspect, because on going through on perusal of the entire ruling, it nowhere says that the goods, the ownership of the inputs belong to the principal. What are the facilities under the job work? So this was that was regarding to the scope of the interpretation of the term job work. Now let us see what is the procedural and what are the facilities under section 143 with respect to the principal and the job worker. The principal can send his inputs and the capital goods to a job worker without payment of GST. It means that when any principal is sending his inputs or the capital goods, including the intermediate products, for any treatment or the process to the premises of the job worker, at the time of removal of these goods, the principal is not required to pay GST on this transaction. Further, the provision says the principal can even directly send his inputs and the raw material or the capital goods directly to the premises of the job worker without bringing them to the premises of principal. It means that the principal is not required to bring the inputs or the capital goods to his premises. He can directly send these goods to the premises of the job worker, subject to the procedural condition that we will discuss later. The principal will be entitled to take the input tax credit on these inputs which are being directly supplied to the job worker. After completion of treatment and the process, job worker can clear these goods without payment of tax to another job worker for further process or the treatment, or he can return giving back to the principal these goods without payment of tax. So first, the principal can send the inputs or the capital goods to the premises of the job worker without payment of tax. Principal can also send the goods directly to the premises of the job worker without bringing them to his premises without payment of tax, and he can claim the input tax credit at that time also. After completion of the treatment or the process, job worker can send these goods back to the principal without payment of tax, or the job worker can send these goods for further process to another job worker without payment of tax. It further says the principal can supply the goods to his customers directly from the premises of the job worker. It means that the principal is not required to bring back the processed goods to his premises. He can directly sell or supply these goods to his customers directly from the premises of the job worker, subject to condition that on payment of tax within India or with or without payment of tax for export. So Chairman sir, here I again require your view that it says the principal can supply the goods to his customers directly from the premises of the job worker on payment of tax within India. So whether the principal can supply the goods from the job worker's premises to the SEZ unit without payment of tax, because the plain language of this provision does not say without payment of tax the goods can be supplied to the SEZ unit, because SEZ unit is within India, it is not for the export per se. So it also requires, in my view, if the section 16 of the IGST allows to clear the goods without payment of tax as a zero rated supply to the SEZ unit, then that cannot be curtailed by this provision. Principal must have the right to supply these goods without payment of tax to SEZ unit directly from the premises of the job worker. So to avail these facilities, what are the conditions prescribed under the law? For sending the goods to the job worker without payment of tax, for getting back these goods from the premises of the job worker without payment of tax, to clear the goods directly from the premises of the job worker on payment of tax. The law says if the principal want to bring back these goods means inputs or the capital goods or intermediate products, or principal wants to supply these inputs, capital goods directly from the premises of the job worker, this must be done in case of inputs within 1 year of being there sent out, in case of capital goods within 3 years of their being sent out, and in case of molds and dies, jigs and fixtures or the tools, there is no time limit. The meaning thereby, if the principal has sent any inputs to the premises of the job worker for any treatment or the processes, then those inputs must be returned back within 1 year, within one period of time from the date on which they were sent. In case of capital goods, it is 3 period, or within such time, such goods must have been sold by the principal from the premises of the job worker. In case the principal fails to get back these goods, then the goods sent shall be treated as supply of goods, and it has to be reflected in the GSTR1 return, and the interest has to be paid from that date. In case where the goods are directly supplied to the premises of job worker by the principal then in that case, the period of 1 year and the 3 year shall be calculated from the date on which the job worker has received these goods in his premises. And in other case, where the principal has sent the goods, the 1 year starts from the date on which the principal has cleared the goods from his premises. The commissioner has special power to extend such period in case of inputs one year further, and in case of capital goods 2 years further, not beyond that. So the interesting issue came in case of the Ratan Projects and Engineering Company Private Limited, 2019-23 GSTL 416, Advance Authority of Advance Ruling, West Bengal. In this, the principal sent is different kind of steel structure for galvanizing process to the premises of the job worker. Along with this different steel structure, he was supplying furnace oil, zinc, nickel, etc. products for the processing galvanized on these products to protect them from the junk. And after that, the job worker doing the galvanizing process returning back to the principal. The question was raised before the authority that the principal is not receiving this zinc, furnace oil, nickel from the premises of the job worker within the stipulated time, certainly because these goods are being consumed by the job worker itself. Whether can it be treated as a supply of services covering under the section 60, covering under section 143, because the job worker is not giving back these inputs to the principal. The advance authority has held that the goods are being consumed not in the same form, but the goods are being passed in the form of galvanized coating on these products, and they have to be treated that the goods are returned back to the principal not in the same form, and this treatment has to be treated as a supply of services as a job worker. So far as whether the entire commodity of zinc, nickel, furnace oil sent to the job worker has been consumed for this or has been supplied clandestinely from the premises of the job worker is a question of assessment, but so far as the authority is concerned, it has to be treated as a supply of services because these are the consumable goods. So the conclusion can be that even if the inputs which are being consumed during any process or treatment being carried out by the job worker, then that consumables can also be removed from the premises of the principal without payment of tax, even though they are not received back by the principal in the same form. What are the other conditions? The principal has to declare the premises of the job worker as an additional place of the business for the supplying the goods directly to the customers. In case the principal wants to supply the goods directly from the premises of the job worker, then in that case, the principal has to declare the place of the job worker as an additional place of business. The logic is that then only the department, the government can have the check on this transaction where the goods are being actually supplied, which are subject to tax directly from the premises of the job worker to the principal. So the meaning that if the job worker himself is registered as a service provider, then the principal is not required to fulfill this condition because the job work is otherwise under the scanner of the department as he is registered. But in cases where the job worker is not registered, then in that case the principal has to show the place of the business of the job worker as an additional place of business. Remove the goods under the cover challan. When the principal is clearing the goods or sending the goods to the job worker, or when the job worker is returning the goods must be cleared under the challan that we will see in detail the procedure. Endorsement on the challan by the job worker. When the job worker is sending these goods back to the principal, then the challan which was provided by the principal when originally goods were sent to the job worker has to endorse on this challan the quantity and the description of the goods. So it can be tallied that what was the quantity sent by the principal to the job worker and what was the nature of the goods, and after the treatment or the process when the goods are being sent by the job worker to the principal, what is the nature of the goods and what is the quantity. So the endorsement is also requirement when the job worker is sending the goods to another job worker or when the job worker is returning the goods to the principal. Intimation to the jurisdictional officer. In one of the circulars, it is said that the intimation in the form ITC04 that we will see later, that is the good intimation to the jurisdictional officer of the principal. So the principal who is sending the goods from his premises without payment of tax, he has to give the intimation to his jurisdictional officer. All the responsibility is of the principal to maintain the books of accounts so far as the goods are being sent to the job worker, which goods are received back, how much quantity is received back, which goods are further directly sent to the customers, and which the goods are further supplied or sent to the job worker for further process. So these all accounts have to be maintained by the principal, and it is his responsibility. So these are the conditions of the time limit and other miscellaneous conditions which are to be complied with to remove the goods or clear the goods, sending the goods without payment of tax by the principal to the job worker, and getting back or clearing from the job worker premises to the principal without payment of tax. Input tax credit. Apparently the input tax credit for the job worker, the first time I realized that input tax credit issue can be so simple in case of job worker. The principal is entitled to take input tax credit on inputs of the capital goods directly sent to the premises of the job worker. As I said earlier, that if the goods are being directly sent by the principal to the premises of the job worker, then the principal is entitled to claim the input tax credit. He has to file the ITC04 return. It is on quarterly basis. It contains the details of the challan in respect of which the goods are sent to the job worker and received back from the job worker, or the goods which are sent from the premises of the job worker to another job worker. ITC04 form is to be filed on or before the 25th day of the succeeding month, the quarter during which such goods are sent and received back. So ITC04 form is to be filed on the quarterly basis, and the prescribed date for filing this ITC04 form is next month of the quarter, 25th day. When the goods are not received back or supplied directly to the customer within the stated time limit, as we discussed earlier, the principal is required to declare such transaction as a supply in the GSTR1, and he is liable to pay the tax along with the applicable interest. So when the goods are not received by the supplier, by the principal within the period, in case of inputs 1 year, has to disclose this transaction as a outward supply in GSTR1 transaction and has to pay tax along with the interest thereon. In my view, this tax can be paid by debiting the input tax rate from the electronic credit ledger if the principal having the excess credit balance in his ledger, but interest has to be paid in such circumstances in cash. So these were regarding the input tax credit in case of the job work process. The issues regarding the valuation under the job work. Circular 38/12/2018 GST dated 26th March 2018. The issue was raised whether the value of molds and dies, jigs and fixtures or tools provided by the principal to the job worker would be included in the value of the job work services. The relevant provision will be the clause B of subsection 2 of section 15. It says the value of supply shall include. So here the value of supply of the job worker we are considering. Any amount that the supplier, who is the job worker in our case, is liable to pay in relation to any supply, but it has been incurred by the recipient of the supply, principal, that is the principal in our case, and it is not included in the price actually paid or payable for the services. The meaning that what is the value, whether the value of the molds and dies is to be included in the services provided by the job worker. This provision says it is to be included if the job worker is liable to supply these molds and the jigs as per the agreement, but they are being supplied by the principal to the job worker for carrying out any process, and the price of these molds and jigs are not actually included in the value charged by the job worker, then it is to be included. In another way, if the contract says the molds and dies, jigs and fixtures or the tools are to be provided by the principal himself for carrying out any treatment by the job worker, and they are being provided by the principal to the job worker, then in that case the job worker is job worker is not liable to charge the value of these goods in his value of services. Again, the similar issue raised in by the trade and industries, and it was dealt in the another circular number 4721 2018, 8th June 2018, whether molds and dies owned by the OEM that are sent free of cost to the component manufacturer, the job worker is liable to tax whether OEM is required to reverse the ITC. When the principal has supplied molds and dies to the job worker free of cost, so it is not a supply itself because there is no consideration, and therefore it is not subject to tax. So such goods can be supplied without payment of tax, and it is supplied sent to the job worker in furtherance of the business, and therefore the OEM, who is the principal, is not required to reverse the input tax rate. That is clarified by this circular. So these both circular similar in nature, using the different terminologies and different issues. In this circular, second circular, also the issue identical, the earlier circular also dealt with, and the provision to section 15(2)(b) was dealt with, and the same view taken. And the similar issue came before the advanced authority of the Kerala state. In Irani rubbers and the Estera polymers, there also said if the molds and dies, jigs and fixtures are sent to the job worker, the value is not required to be added to the consideration charged by the job worker from the principal if the principal was liable to send these goods to the job worker. Waste and scrap. Subsection 5 of section 143 deals with the issue regarding the waste and scrap. It says that any waste or the scrap generated during job work may be supplied by the job worker directly from his premises of business on payment of tax if the job worker is registered. It means that if the job worker is registered, on payment of tax the job worker can supply this waste and the scrap from his premises. If the job worker is not registered, then in that case the principal shall supply this waste or the scrap on payment of tax. So it is very simple. If the job worker is registered, then the tax is to be paid on the supply made by the job worker from his premises. Otherwise, in case of unregistered job worker, the principal has to discharge this liability on supply of waste and scrap, or even otherwise the principal can sell this waste and scrap from the premises of the job worker, in my view, even though the job worker is registered, because this waste and scrap belongs to the principal himself because he is the owner of the actual goods. So the waste is the byproduct but nothing else. In case of Industrial Engineering Corporation 2019-31 GSTL 345, the issue raised before the advance authority that is there tax liability on the applicant on value of the scrap not received back from the job worker. In this case, the principal, who is the applicant, was not receiving the scrap back to his premises because the transportation cost would be more than the value of the scrap, and therefore the job worker was liable to pay the tax on the waste supplied by the job worker. It was the ruling in this case, which was in consonance with the provisions of subsection 5 of section 143. Which are the documents to be carried or generated when the goods are sent by the principal to the premises of the job worker, or when the job worker returning these goods back to the principal, or further sending the goods to another job worker for further process. The rule 45 says when any inputs, semi-finished goods or the capital goods are sent to the job worker under the cover of challan issued by the principal, including where the goods are directly sent to the job worker. So the rule 45 says when the principal sending the goods to the premises of the job worker without payment of tax, these goods must be accompanied by the challan. Further, rule 55 also says when any consignor is supplying the goods for the job work process, then these goods must be supplied along with the challan. CBEC flyer number 27 dated 1st January 2018 dealt with different aspects how the documents are to be minted and generated. So the challan is to be generated in accordance with the circular also 38/12/2018, 26 March 2018. It says where the goods are sent by the principal to the job worker. Challan has to be generated by the principal in triplicate copy. First copy shall be retained by the principal and the 2 copies shall be sent by the principal to the job worker. While the job worker returning the goods to the principal after the completion of the process of the treatment, the job worker shall make endorsement on this additional copy describing the quantity of the goods and the description of the goods by way of endorsement on this challan, and this challan shall be sent back to the principal. In cases where the goods are sent from the one job worker to another job worker, either the principal or the job worker shall generate the challan when the goods are being sent by the one job worker to another job worker, or the circular says the additional copy remains with this job worker which was sent by the principal at the original time shall also be supplied by the job worker to the another job worker. So when the goods are being sent by one job worker to the another job worker for further process, either the principal or the job worker has to generate the new challan, or the job worker can himself issue the endorse the challan which was sent by the principal if there is additional copy with the job worker. Where the goods are directly sent to the job worker, it means when principal directly sending the goods from his suppliers to the premises of the job worker, then in that case the goods must be accompanied by the invoices raised by the supplier in name of the principal, wherein the name of the job worker has to be mentioned as a consignee, and the buyer who is the principal has to generate the challan also. So when the goods are being sent by the supplier on behalf of the principal directly to the premises of the job worker, in that case the goods shall be accompanied by the tax invoice raised by the supplier, where showing the principal as a buyer and the job worker as a consignee, and the principal shall raise the challan for sending these goods from the premises of his supplier to the premises of the job worker. The circular further says when the goods are being imported and are directly supplied to the job worker by the principal, then in that case the bill of entry has to be accompanied and the principal has to raise the challan with these goods, and they can be directly sent to the premises of the job worker without bringing them to the premises of the principal. When the goods are returned in piecemeal to the principal, the circular says, as discussed earlier, when the principal are sending the goods to the job worker, he shall raise the challan in 3 copies. 2 copies shall be sent to the job worker. But when the job worker returning these goods to the principal in piecemeal, not all goods together, then in that case the additional copy cannot be endorsed by the job worker. Job worker has to raise the new challan, and under this new challan the goods are to be returned back to the principal. What is the content of the challan? Many times apparently it seems very simple, and it is simple except 1 or 2 points. The rule 55 says the challan must contain it must be serially numbered, not exceeding the 16 digits in one or multiple series, similar like the tax invoices. Date, name and address and GSTN of the consignee if registered. It means that if the job worker is registered, then his name and the GSTN number is to be mentioned. Name and the address, GSTN of the consignor. If his registered principal is registered, then his GSTN number is also to be mentioned. HSN, description of the goods and the quantity, provisional basis where exact is not possible. The most important is the taxable value. Many times this question arises are being asked to us that under the challan what value is to be treated, what value is to be mentioned, because it is not a supply, it has not a transaction value. So what is the value, the taxable value? So in my view, the principal should disclose the transaction value, for the reason that he has to generate the e-way bill also to determine whether the consignment value is more than 50,000 rupees or not. So that can be determined whether the e-way bill is required to be generated or not. And if the goods are not returned within 1 year, 3 years, and at that time, this challan would be relevant to determine the value of the goods when it was sent to the job worker. So taxable value is to be disclosed in the challan. The rule further says the tax rate and the tax amount is to be disclosed where the transportation is for the supply of goods. So when the goods are being supplied by the principal to the job worker without payment of tax, it is not a supply, and therefore the tax amount and the tax rate of the goods is not required to be mentioned in the challan. It can be stated as a not applicable. Place of supply in case of the interstate movement of goods. If the goods are being sent from one state to another state to the job worker, then in that case the place of supply is to be mentioned. Otherwise the place of supply is not required to be mentioned in the challan if it is within the state only. And the signature certainly. So the important aspect is the taxable value and the tax rate and the tax amount that is to be disclosed in the challan. Generation of e-way bill. So along with the challan, the e-way bill has to be generated. Rule 138 says that e-way bill is required to be generated by every registered person who causes the movement of goods where the consignment value is exceeding rupees 50,000. Therefore, if the principal is registered, he has to generate e-way bill in case of removal of goods where the value of the good is more than 50,000, and that is why I said the value of the goods, the taxable value of the goods is to be mentioned in the challan to determine whether the e-way bill is required to be generated or not. The explanation 2 to the rule 138.1 says how the consignment value, that is the 50,000, is to be determined. The consignment value of goods shall be the value determined in accordance with the provisions of section 15. It means the transaction value declared in the delivery challan, and also includes the GST if any charge, and shall exclude the value of exempt supply. So when the goods are being sent without payment of tax, GST, to the job worker, the tax amount shall not be there, as I stated. It is not a supply, and therefore the consignment value, that is the value of the goods, shall be the value to determine and the limit of 50,000. Irrespective of the value of the consignment, e-way bill has to be generated by the principal or the job worker if registered, in case the goods are sent by the principal from one state or union territory to another state or the union territory. It means the rule 138 further says that if there is interstate transaction, if the goods are being supplied by the principal to the job worker in any other state or the union territory, then in that case, irrespective of the consignment value, that is the threshold limit of 50,000, the e-way bill has to be generated, and it is mandatory. The proviso says to rule 138. Explanation 1 to rule 138.3 says, in case the goods sent by the unregistered principal to the registered job worker, then in that case the job worker has to generate the e-way bill. Subrule 1 of 138 says the registered person who causes the movement of goods shall generate the e-way bill, but in case the principal is unregistered and the job worker is registered, then in that case the job worker has to generate the e-way bill. So challans and the e-way bills are the documents to be accompanied with when the goods are sent by the principal to the job worker, or when the job worker returning these goods back to the principal. In the tariff notification, as we are aware, we know that the notification number 11/2017 central tax rate is the notification to determine the rate of tax applicable on various services where the job work services are prescribed under the serial number 26. In this 26 serial number, there are two important entries where the rate of tax is different for the same services. As I stated in the first slide regarding the scope of the job work, where the term registered person is used. The definition of the job work says the goods must be belong to the registered principal, then it is a job work. So what was the reason and what is the logic for using the terms registered person in the definition? Here the heading 9988 says manufacturing service on physical inputs goods owned by others. Rule 1D says, item number 1D says services by way of job worker other than 1A, 1B, 1C. These are the specific services relating to the printing, jewelry, job work services. Above, then the rate of tax on job work services is 12%. The next entry, the item number 5, says manufacturing services, item number 4, sorry. Manufacturing services on physical inputs, goods owned by others other than 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 2A and the 3 above, then in that case the 18%. It means if the nature of services is identical, but if it falls under the 1D, then the rate of tax will be the 12%. And for the same services, if it is covered under the clause item number 4, then it shall be the 18%. The job workers activity remains same. So for this confusion, the circular was issued, circular number 126/45/2019, 22nd November 2019, wherein stated that, and in my view that is correct also, item number 1D covered only job work services. If we can see that it says the term job work, which is defined as defined under section 268, and therefore it covers the services provided on the goods to a registered person, because it is the job work services where the principal has to be registered. If the principal is registered, then the rate of tax is 12%. Item number 4 specifically exclude the item number 1D, where the job work is included. It means the principal who is the registered, they are included in 1D and they are excluded in the item number 4. And therefore it covers only the services which are carried out on the physical inputs which are owned by the person other than the registered person. So here the meaning is that if the principal is unregistered and the services are provided by the job worker, and if it does not cover under these 1A, 1B and so on, then the rate of tax shall be the 18%. And if he is registered and if he is the job work services, then his activity shall be covered by this residue entry under 1D and the rate of tax shall be the 12%. So Chairman sir, in my view, the relevance of the registered person term used in the definition of job work is regarding the classification of the services to determine the rate of tax only. Let us further see the different activities. Bus bodybuilding activity. The serial number 26, item 1C of the notification 11 of 2017, in this notification, the item 1C is regarding the bus bodybuilding service. As I said, there are different specific services are described under this entry. Activity relating to the bus bodybuilding is classifiable as a service by way of job worker, would fall under the service accounting code 9988 under the said notification. The circular was issued regarding this activity, the bus bodybuilding activity. The fabrication of buses involved two situations in the market. Bus bodybuilders build the bus on own chassis and supplies the bus to the customers. It means when the bus bodybuilders have their own chassis and they build the entire bus and supply the bus directly to the customers, then in that case such supply shall be treated as a supply of goods and it shall be subject to 28% rate of tax. But in cases where the bus bodybuilders builds bus body on the chassis provided by the customers, who is the principal, and charges only for the fabrication and the bus bodybuilding they have consumed and other inputs and the consumables and skills used by them, then in that case such activity of bus bodybuilding shall be treated as a supply of services and shall be covered under the SAC code 9988 18%. So this circular enumerated two situations where the bus bodybuilders builds his own bus on his own chassis, then in that case is supply of goods, and in another cases where the chassis are being supplied by the principal customer of the job worker and the bus bodybuilding is fabricated with his skill and the labor, then in that case it is a job work services covered under the notification number 11 of 2017. Advance authority regarding to this issue, too important that the Tata Marco Polo Motors Limited versus 2019-27 GSTL 283 Karnataka Advance Authority ruling. Here the two situations were scenario before the authority. the body is built without physical presence of the chassis supplied by the principal. So as per the standard size of the chassis, and when the bus body is ready, the principal send the chassis and the body is only fitted on this chassis directly, fabricated and supplied the bus to the supplied to the principal. So what would be the rate and whether it is a supply of goods or the services? And in another scenario, as per the specifications, the bus body are built by the job worker. Chassis are being supplied by the principal to the job worker, and thereafter, as with the skills, they are being fitted on the chassis supplied by the principal. So, what would be the rate of tax, and is it a supply of services or supply of goods? The authority said in first scenario, it is a supply of goods and subject to 28% rate of tax because the bus body is built by the job worker on standard basis as per the size of the chassis which are standardly available. So in these cases, the job worker keeps the bus body ready. Whenever the chassis come to him for making the bus, he fit this body as per the standard size and supply the bus to the to the principal, and therefore it is a supply of goods. It is not a supply of services because the bodies are already fixed, made in advance by the job worker without any order. In second scenario, the body are being built as per the sizes required by the principal, and thereafter the body is fitted on the chassis and are supplied to the principal, and therefore it is supply of services as a job worker, rate of tax covered under the notification number 11 of 2017. So when the authority here very nuance difference, I would say that merely the body are ready by the job worker and they are fitted. So the fitting, that is the fabrication, is also part of services in my view to some extent, and the bus is being supplied by the job worker. So it is also kind of process where the body is fixed on the chassis, and therefore there is another view is possible that it is also a supply of services in both scenario in my view. If chairman can highlight on this aspect also. Another issue also similar in Sanghi Brothers Indore Private Limited 2019-27 GSTL 136. Here the applicant was the principal who was supplying the chassis to the job worker. Job worker was building a body as per the requirement of the principal, who is the applicant, and the bus are being built fitted on the chassis supplied by the principal, who is the applicant, and he was charging the 28% rate of tax as a supply of goods. So the job worker wanted to be safer from his side. Let me charge 28% as a supply of goods, so I am safe in any case. So the principal sought the clarification ruling, and it was held that it is a supply of services as has ruled out in case of Tata Marco Polo, that it is supply of services because the bus body are built as per the requirements of the principal. The chassis are being supplied by the principal to the job worker, and therefore it is supply of services and subject to 18% rate of tax covered under the notification number 28 to notification 11 of 2017. Printing activity, the exhaustive list is there, and very confusion also happens whether it is supply of services or whether it is supply of goods, and under which head this activity would fall to determine the rate of tax also in certain cases. In one says the services by of job work in relation to printing of newspaper, printing of books, including braille books, journals and periodicals, printing of all goods falling under the chapter 48 and 49, which attract the 2.5% GST or the nil. Chapter 48 and 49 are regarding to the goods which are relating to printing material or the books or the documents or the journals. That is the rate of tax for the supply of goods. So here the classification for the services are based on the rate of tax applicable on the goods when they are being resold. So if we notice that in item number 1 and the 2, the services, the activity is same, is identical. Rate of tax is also same, but the item number 1 says by way of job work, and in item number 2 says, where I have highlighted yellow color, services by way of any treatment or the process on the goods belonging to another person. Here the job work term is not used. So the meaning is that, like we discussed earlier, if the principal is the registered person, then it will be covered by the item number 1. And if the principal is not registered, then the same activity shall be covered by the item number 2. Here the rate of tax is same. Similarly, in item number 1A, the term says job work. Though the activity is similar, the rate of tax on these goods which are being manufactured by the job worker is also same under the chapter 48 and 49, that is 6%. So these terminologies are used in item number 2A, that any treatment or the process on goods belonging to another person, so that another person has to be read if he is unregistered person. If he is registered person, then this activity shall be considered as a job work and shall fall under the clause 1A and subject to 12%. Item number 27 says, services by way of printing of all goods falling under the chapter 48 or 49, including newspapers, books, including braille books, journals and periodicals, which attract the rate, GST 6%, 2% or nil, when only content is supplied by this publisher and the physical inputs including the paper used and the printing belonging to the printer, then it is the 12%. It means that only the content is provided by the principal and the job worker using his own papers and for manufacturing any goods which fall under the chapter 48 and 49, irrespective of any rate of tax, 2.2%, 2.5%, 6% or nil, then the rate of tax on this activity shall be the 12%, the activity being carried out by the job worker. In item number 2, other manufacturing services, publishing, printing and reproduction services, material recovery services other than item number 1, the rate of tax shall be 18%. So in cases where the content is provided by the principal to the job worker and all activities including inputs are being supplied by the job worker to the principal, then in that case the rate of tax shall be the 12%. And in any other case where the content is provided by the principal and the activity is not covered by the item number 1 of serial number 27, then the rate of tax would be the 18%, that is to be charged by the job worker on his services. So various advance authorities are there. There are few, that Suki Printpak LLP 2019-31 GSTL 519, Ashok Chaturvedi 2019-21 GSTL 211, Advance Authority of Chhattisgarh. Sri Venkateshwara Enterprise 2019-30 GSTL 83, Advance Authority of Karnataka. In all these advance authority, in my view, rightly classified these entries. These are the entries as per in the notification as on today. Many amendments are made from time to time, and these authorities covering the law as existing at that time when the ruling was given. So this was regarding the pending activity. I'm concluding here. Thank you very much, and over to my chairman, sir.
Then sir, you need to, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kuntal, for a very exhaustive explanation on various procedural aspects relating to job work under the GST Act. In my opinion, the most crucial question to be decided while deciding whether a job work is undertaken or not, decide the question.
Then sir, just a minute sir. Then sir, sorry, disturbance जो आ रहा है, एक मिनट, I am clearing it. Yes sir, just a minute. Then sir, please go ahead sir.
In respect of job work, the crucial question which requires consideration is regarding materials used by the job worker. If a job worker is using his material while executing a job work contract, whether it will be treated as job work or it will not be treated as a job work. If you look at Schedule 2, Entry 3 provides activity of treating or processing on goods belonging to another person as amounting to services. Correspondingly, you need to see entry 6 of that schedule, which says composite supplies of the following activities will be treated as a service. And there you find in clause A, works contract as defined in clause 119 of section 2 of the GST Act. In other words, so far as works contract is concerned, composite supply is a service, which means in a works contract, if you are using or supplying goods as well as services, though it is a composite supply, it will be treated as a service. But you don't find this when you go to entry 3 relating to job work. It simply states processing or treating on goods belonging to another person. Now, therefore, the question is whether using of a material by the job worker will be accepted as a job work and what would be the rate of tax. Kuntal referred to that Supreme Court decision under the excise law. As he rightly stated in his initial remarks, that excise, service tax, GST, they are all different tax regimes. So judgment under the Supreme Court on the excise law cannot be treated as relevant while you are interpreting a provision under the GST law. For GST law, I believe that this Schedule 2, making this clear distinction between job work and works contract, clearly points out that it does not contemplate a job worker using material in order to treat these as a supply of services. But the question is, when you are looking at applying the rate of tax, what would be the situation? In that situation, according to me, one has to look it as to what proportion of material is used by the job worker. If job worker is using marginal material, then it would be a case or a transaction of a composite supply of goods and services where the principal supply is of services and therefore the rate of job work services would apply. And if the material used are substantial, then you cannot say that it is a job work, and job work being not a principal supply, the rate of tax relating to job work will not apply, but the rate of tax relating to goods would apply. Now, therefore, in respect of job work under GST, according to my opinion, what we have to say is it would be a pure job work only if no material is used. It will attract the rate of tax relating to job work if marginal materials are used. But if substantial materials are used, the concept of composite supply, which is defined in section 230 of the GST Act, would come into operation, because while you are executing the job and you are using some material, they can very well be treated as a supply of goods or services which are naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other, one of which is a principal supply, and then you apply the rate accordingly. Therefore, according to my opinion, the judgment under the excise law or the treatment under the excise law, they are all irrelevant. Look at the provisions of the GST law And the GST law makes this distinction. Otherwise, if job work with the use of any material was also to be treated as a supply of service, it would have found its place in entry 6 in schedule 2 and not a separate entry by way of entry 3 in schedule 2. So according to me, job work purely and simply is doing a treatment or process, but if marginal material is used, the rate of tax relating to job work would apply by applying the principle laid down in section 8 relating to applying the tax applicable to the principal supply in case of composite supply. And when there is a substantial material being used, the principal supply being material, it will not be treated as a supply of service, even if some treatment or process is undertaken on the goods of the customer, and it will be treated as a supply of goods. Now, in this context, according to me, the issue of bus body fabrication assumes importance. Various advanced ruling have been referred to, but we all need to keep in mind, firstly, that as laid down in section 103, advanced ruling is binding qua the applicant and the jurisdictional officer of that applicant. Now, therefore, these advanced ruling are not binding law, and the manner in which the advanced rulings are being given, I do not think that we should get carried away by the advanced rulings. They could be a guiding factor for knowing how the authorities view the law, but according to me, we must make interpretations independently based on the provisions of the law or the judgments of High Court or Supreme Court. We cannot be governed by any advanced ruling, whether it is correct or wrong. You can take it for a reference to understand as to how it is understood by the authorities. Otherwise, law will have to be decided independently of the advanced rulings. Therefore, these advanced rulings and our experience in all these 3 years in every state of the country is not good so far as advanced ruling is concerned. And this would be relevant if we look it from the context of a bus body fabrication. Firstly, on 1st March 2018, a circular was issued, dated, which was number 34/8/2018, wherein it was clarified that in the contract of bus body fabrication, there is a composite supply of goods and services, and therefore the rate cannot be determined in isolation. It would be determinative based on facts of each case as to what are the material used, to what extent the services are rendered, based on which the rate is to be decided. This is how a clarification was issued by the GST wing on, or the tax research unit, on their circular dated 1st March 2018. This circular or clarification was followed by another clarification dated 9/8/18, circular number 52/26/2018. Now, in this circular, the authorities tried to explain the tax liability in the context of two types of transactions relating to bus body fabrication. One is when a person is a owner of a chassis and he is fabricating a bus body and selling the completely fully constructed body or a vehicle. In this context, it rightly explained that this is not a question of job work of constructing a bus body building, but it is a transaction of supply of car or a vehicle when the fully constructed vehicle is sold, and therefore the rate of tax relating to vehicle, which is 28% would apply. No dispute about this. Correspondingly, it says that when the job worker is receiving a chassis from the customer and he is charging fabrication charges along with charges for goods consumed in the process, it will be treated as a supply of service, and therefore the applicable rate of tax would be 18%. I believe that pursuant to this clarification and the notification issued for the job works relating to building of bus bodies, a general impression has been received by many that bus body fabrication contract is a job work contract attracting 18% tax. According to me, if we apply that principle, that if I am constructing a bus body by fully utilizing all my materials, the chassis is received from the customer, all the materials for construction of bus bodies belong to me. Therefore, there is a substantial supply of goods in the execution of that contract. Can such a contract be treated as a job work contract, attracting 18% tax? Or can it be said that whatever is the principal supply and whatever is the rate of tax applicable to it would apply to that transaction? This notification prescribing 18% rate for the construction of a bodybuilding job work contract, according to me, can apply only when chassis and all materials are received from the customer and only some consumables are used by the job worker. If the job worker, because in respect of this kind of transactions, it is seen that the contractor uses substantial materials of his own when he is only receiving chassis from the customer and he is constructing a bus body. Now, therefore, to say that every contract of constructing a bus body when the chassis is received from the customer is a job work contract attracting 18% tax, according to me, is not a correct interpretation of the provision of the law. Even the circular, I would say, is misguiding because it says when the contractor charges fabrication charges along with the goods consumed in the process, which someone misread it as using all other materials with which the bus body is constructed. And therefore, now, while according to me, if substantial material is used, it cannot be treated as a job work contract. Even if we refer to that advanced ruling in Tata Motokolo, which Kuntal referred to, can this kind of advanced ruling be considered as correctly laying down the law? It says that if you are aware of the size of the chassis and therefore prepare the body and thereafter fix the body on that chassis, it is not a job work, but it is only after receipt of chassis from the customer, if you construct the body, it would be treated as a job work. How the process is undertaken cannot determine whether a particular process is a job work or not. Even if I keep the body ready, am I not doing some treatment or process on the chassis which I receive from the customer? How can it be said that because part of the contract was undertaken before the receipt of material from the customer, though that material which I am preparing, I am using it on the material of the customer, but because you had done it in advance, therefore it is not a job work? According to me, it do not truly reflect the law. It cannot be so interpreted that this is not a job work because it is done in this manner. Therefore, this bus body fabrication, ultimately, according to me, the crucial question would be this only, that if you want to consider a transaction of job work, the law, according to me, does not permit you to use any material. For the purpose of application of the rate of tax, you have to look at the context of the extent to which the material of the job worker is used in the contract. By applying the concept of composite supply and the rate of tax, the rate relating to job work contract may apply if the material used are marginal. And that is why in one of the circulars, the government has clarified that in a job work contract, marginal material can be used. But according to me, that marginal material can be used only means that for applying the rate of tax, even if you have used marginal materials, the rate of tax relating to job work service would apply. Another important question which needs consideration, and I think there should not be much dispute, but for one advance ruling of the Maharashtra state, which is rendered in the case of JSW Energy Limited 55 GSTR 239. In this advance ruling, the facts were all the inputs and raw materials were provided by the customer, and the customer was a registered person. That was also not in dispute, and the job worker was converting those materials into a different commercial commodity. The process was resulting into manufacture, and therefore the advance ruling authority concluded that because it is a process of manufacture, it does not amount to job work. According to me, what is the effect of the process is not material for deciding whether it is a job work or not. Even if a process results into manufacture of goods, a distinct commodity by name, nature, character is produced, still it can be treated as a job work contract if the contract involves application of process or treatment by the customer, by the job worker on the material received from a registered principal. In fact, in Gujarat, there is already an advance ruling to this effect in the case of Inox Air Products Private Limited 67 GSTR 362, wherein air, water, and electricity was provided by the customer by using of which gas was manufactured. And the advance ruling authority held that the process amounts to job work because all inputs are provided by the customer, and the job worker only treats or processes those materials to produce some goods. Even the Kerala Advance Ruling Authority also in the Bharat case of Bharat Petroleum Corporation has held similarly in 67 GSTR 136. Therefore, how the process is undertaken, whether it was undertaken before the receipt of material from the customer or not, what is the effect or result of that process, according to me, these are all irrelevant consideration for deciding whether the process amounts to manufacture, amounts to job work or not. Simply stated, one has to simply look at and see whether the process undertaken by the job worker is of doing some activity resulting into a process or treatment on the goods belonging to the registered principal or not. If that is so, it would be a job worker, otherwise not. The another important aspect which Kuntal referred to was the circular of the government, the GST policy wing, circular number 47/21/2018 GST dated 8/6/18. He referred to this circular. It rightly says that if the original principle is giving molds, dies, jigs, fixtures, or tools to the component manufacturer under an agreement which requires the manufacturers to give those mold, dies, etc. to the component manufacturer for the manufacturing of those goods, then the price of those goods will not be required to be added to the consideration relating to supply of services by the component manufacturer. But if the component manufacturer was not required to give, but it gives those materials, molds, jigs, etc. to the component manufacturer. The principal gives molds, dies, jigs, fixtures, and tools to the component manufacturer, though under an agreement, it was the liability of the component manufacturer to procure those molds, jigs, etc. Then the annotized value of such molds, jigs, etc. will be required to be added to the service consideration for determining the liability of the job worker for such contract executed by it. This is rightly so clarified in view of clause B of subsection 2 of section 15 of the GST Act. But if you look at that circular also gives one more clarification, and that is where I feel is not a correct clarification by that authority. The circular further states, which perhaps Kuntala has missed out, but which needs a consideration. That very circular further says that if the liability or responsibility to procure the mold, jigs, etc. was of the component manufacturer, and still if it is provided by the principal, then the input tax credit is required to be reduced by the principal manufacturer. In accordance to that clarification, since you have not acted as per the contract, the input tax credit is required to be disallowed. Whether this is a correct clarification. As we are all aware, section 16 makes it very clear that if any goods or services are used in the course or furtherance of business, then subject to fulfillment of other conditions, a registered person is entitled to input tax credit under the GST Act. I, for the purpose of my business, need certain components. I get it manufactured through someone else. Is it not a part of an activity of my business? If I do not use it as per the contractual understanding, it might be a breach of the contract. It might invite a liability on the component manufacturer by incorporating the annotized price of those molds while discharging his liability for the services rendered by him. But merely because the molds, dies were not used as per the contractual understanding, can it be said that it is not used as per business and therefore the input tax credit is required to be reduced? According to me, even if it is not used as per the contractual terms and condition, it cannot have the effect of requiring me to reduce the input tax credit admissible to me. Again, that very circular further goes on and clarify that if you are doing the contract of servicing of cars, and in servicing of cars, if you are charging the price separately for the goods and separately for the services, then the rate of tax relating to those goods and those services respectively would be applicable. Now, question is whether, again, this is a correct clarification by the authorities. I receive a car from the customer for doing the repair job. So the goods are received from the customer. I am repairing that car. If I have purely done the service work without using any material, it would have been a job work, and the job work charges would attract tax at the rate applicable to job work. But if I use some material, question is, will it mean that to the extent you charge the price separately for the goods, the rate of tax applicable to the goods should be applied? And to the extent the consideration is charged for the services, the rate of tax applicable to those services will apply. According to me, it cannot be so considered. As I explained earlier, in the case of job work involving use of some material by the customer, by the job worker, you have to look at the transaction to find out what is substantial. If material is substantial to the entire contract, the rate of tax of material should apply. If the services are substantial to the entire contractual consideration, the rate of tax applicable to services would apply. It appears that the authorities have not applied the concept of composite supply, because it has clarified that if you have charged the price separately, in other words, according to the clarificatory authority, if the charges for goods and services are separately charged, then the principle of composite supply would not apply. In my opinion, there is nothing in the definition of composite supply in section 230, which speaks about the manner in which the consideration is charged. The larger question for consideration is, if there is a composite supply of goods and services which are naturally bundled, supplied in conjunction with each other, merely because the price is separately charged, if one of them is a principal supply, will it not be treated as a composite supply? In my opinion, while in case of mixed supply, the definition specifically refers to a single price being charged for the supply of goods and services, there is no reference as to how the consideration is charged for the supply of goods or services. Whether consideration is charged separately or one consideration for the entire supply of services, supply of goods and services, if the transaction otherwise satisfies the concept of composite supply, it has to be treated as a composite supply. In fact, the decision of Gujarat High Court in Torrent Powers Limited versus Union of India 61 GSTR 454 clearly supports this proposition. In this case, this was one of the issues before the Gujarat High Court, wherein along with the principal supply of services of electricity, various ancillary and incidental services were supplied and they were charged separately. The question before the High Court was whether this would amount to a composite supply, and since the principal supply is exempt, whether the ancillary and incidental services which are supplied by charging separately would be exempt from tax or not. Honorable Gujarat High Court has not accepted the contention on behalf of the state and has accepted the contention made on behalf of the company that even if separate charges are collected for different services, if they are really composite services and if the principal service is exempt, then the ancillary and incidental services will also be exempt from tax. If we apply this decision to the transaction of servicing of a car, if I am undertaking a service of a car, naturally in the course of service, I use some material. Both goes hand in hand. They are naturally bundled, they are supplied in conjunction with each other, and therefore they clearly fall as a composite supply. And if it is a composite supply, one will have to see what is the principal supply and then apply that rate of tax. Therefore, the circular saying that if you charge separately for goods and services, both would attract different rate of taxes, according to me, is not correct. And that needs a reconsideration. Another important aspect in context of job work which needs consideration is whether it is an interstate contract, interstate supply of services or intrastate supply of services. Supposing I am a job worker in Gujarat, a customer in Maharashtra invites me for doing some process on its goods at its premises in Maharashtra. Therefore, I go from Maharashtra to from Gujarat to Maharashtra, undertake that process, and comes back to Gujarat. Whether this will be treated as an interstate supply of services or it would be treated as an intrastate supply within Maharashtra because of the execution of contract in Maharashtra. In my opinion, for resolving this controversy, we'll have to see the definition of fixed establishment as contained in section 250 of the GST Act. Whether I had a fixed establishment in Maharashtra, meaning thereby whether I have a place of reasonable degree of permanency and having those arrangements for the services and of technical know-how and human resources for giving services or receiving services, etc., as defined in section 250. If I don't have a fixed establishment, I merely go there and undertake the contract there. According to me, even though the contract is executed in Maharashtra, if the consideration is less than 20 lakhs and I otherwise don't need a registration in Maharashtra, it has to be treated as an interstate supply of services. But this kind of controversy may also arise. I am just referring to this aspect. I may briefly also answer to the queries which Kuntal had raised. Here, during the course of his deliberation, initially raised the question of the purpose of using the term registered person as a principle in the definition of job work. Because to be a job work under section 268, undertaking a process or treatment on goods belonging to a registered person is necessary. The question is, why use of registered person? According to me, you also should refer to Schedule 2. Section 7 defines these terms or scope of supply. And then it says that if it is a supply as defined, then whether it is a supply of goods or supply of services should be determined as what has been laid down in Schedule 2. If you refer to Schedule 2, nowhere in Schedule 2 you will find the use of the term job work. Entry 3 says treatment or process is applied on goods belonging to another person. The term job work is not used. Therefore, whether principal is registered or not, it will be a supply of service. It will not be a job work. Job work requires execution of a work on the goods belonging to a principal who should be a registered person. But for a service, it is not necessary that you should have been executing a work on the goods belonging to a registered person. Therefore, if I am executing a contract of treating or processing on goods belonging to someone else, and if that someone else is not a registered person, my supply will be of services, though it will not be in the nature of job work. So that is how there is a difference, and this difference, as he was lightly referring to various entries, is in the context of the schedules prescribing rate under notification 11 of 2017. Because if it is a job work, it is a different rate. If it is not a job work, then it will fall under a different schedule entry. Now, therefore, according to me, the reason for the difference in use of this principal being a taxable person or a registered person is this. Then the second question he raised relating to the materials used in the execution of contract. I have elaborately dealt with that issue. Therefore, I don't further deal with that aspect.
Yes.
The third question that was raised is where the principal is dispatching the goods directly from the place of business of the job worker, wherein one of the conditions which he referred to required that when you are selling within India, it should be against payment of tax. If it is export, it can be with or without payment of tax. And therefore, the question posed by him is, if I am supplying to an SEZ, which is a zero-rated supply, not attracting tax, can as a principal, I not dispatch the good directly from the place of business of a job worker, or whether one can say that because I am not paying tax on that transaction, I cannot do. In my opinion, that condition providing that on a payment of tax within India needs to be read, understood, and interpreted to mean if payable. If under the law tax is not attracted, it cannot be interpreted to provide that you have to bring back the goods and then you can dispatch. This cannot be the interpretation, nor even the object of the provision. The object is to ensure that the tax liability is discharged as per the provisions of the Act. You cannot read and interpret this provision to say that if tax was payable and I had paid the tax, I can move it directly from the premises of the job worker. But even though tax is not attracted under the provisions of the Act, since because of that provision, I am not paying tax, I cannot dispatch the goods directly from the place of business of the job worker. So according to me, irrespective of the fact that whether tax is payable or not, yes, when the condition says that tax payable when the movement is within India, it means if tax is otherwise attracted under the provision of the Act, it should be paid. If tax is otherwise not attracted, then there is no requirement that because you are not paying tax, you cannot dispatch the material directly from the job worker's premises. The last issue which he touched during the course of deliberation was relating to interest. If the capital goods are not received back within the stipulated time limit as provided under section 143, the law says it will be deemed that you had supplied the goods when were originally sent to the job worker, and the tax relating thereto will be required to be admitted along with the interest. Kuntal said that if you have an input tax credit, you can pay this with by adjustment of input tax credit. I fully agree with it. There is no need that, in spite of the fact that you have an input tax credit in your electronic credit ledger, you need to pay the tax in cash. You can very well adjust it and discharge your liability by adjusting the credit. But he further said that because the provision says that it has to be paid with interest, you need to pay interest also. Here the question needs a consideration, considering the provision of section 50, even though the amendment has been made. Irrespective of the amendment, there are subsequent decisions to the effect that the amendment is only by way of clarificatory and is applicable right from inception. Ultimately, if right from that very stage on the date when I moved the goods to the job worker, I had the credit balance in my electronic credit ledger, which consistently continued during the entire period of 2 years, 3 years, whatever is the time limit applicable to the particular goods. And I am liable to pay tax. And I am paying by adjusting the credit. Why should I be made liable to pay interest for that? Ultimately, the concept of interest is for compensating someone for withholdment of the payment due to that party. If I had an enough credit balance in my ledger, and if I am entitled to discharge my liability with the help of that balance lying in the credit ledger, if I am able to establish and show that right from the day when I sent the goods to the job worker, consistently I was having a balance in the electronic credit ledger, which can take care of the liability which is arising subsequently because of the non-return of goods by the job worker. Why should I be liable to interest? Authorities would levy interest, but according to me, there is a very strong case to contend that in such circumstances, interest is not attractive. I think these are some of the issues on which Kuntal, while elaborately explaining the procedure and various aspects relating to this job work, raised poses on which he wanted my views, and that is why I am expressing on those issues. Now let us take up those certain questions. I think Kuntal, you need to take up those queries which have been raised by some of the participants.
Yes.
So should I read it as per the instruction of Nikita madam? Should I read the questions? I have compiled.
Yes,
it.
please read.
Fine. The
That
first
would be
question
faster.
is, the first question is there any turnover limit for job work? The question is only this much. Is there any turnover limit for job work? I
Yes,
think
there
with
is
respect to
threshold.
registration.
Threshold limit is 20 lakhs rupees is available.
Okay,
For registration is 20 lakhs. Otherwise,
20 lakhs.
for a job work, what is the consideration for the job work is irrelevant. Irrespective of what is the consideration, the transaction would be job work.
So it is a
Okay.
supply of services, so limit is available for registration.
Thank you. So the next question is, if plaster manufacturer takes cement from customer and he buys sand and chemical and supplies plaster to the customer, in this case it is job work or a supply of goods or service. Cement received is without bill, ITC taken by the customer. What is your view about job work? If you can clarify the question, sir. This is the text of the question.
As Bhavya bhai, the job worker manufactures the cement,
Yes.
also manufacture the plasters out of the cement received by the principal, who is the customer, and the job worker receives the sand and chemical on his own. Is it the correct?
Yes. Yes.
Is it the question?
That is the question. Please go ahead, sir.
Then if the substantial material is the cement which is supplied and out of which the plaster is made, then it is a job work manufacturing services.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question is
Yeah,
regarding
very true, very true.
next question is regarding heading 9988 manufacturing service. If any process or treatment which is carried out by the job worker for registered principal is not amounting to manufacturing, in that case, can we classify under 9988 as the process is not manufacturing?
9988 in my view, manufacturing.
एक मिनट
Sir,
बता
just
दीजिए.
If the activity is not a manufacturing, then in that can be a specific services if it is if must be classified under the heading. So only the manufacturing services, job work services is not the view. There can be a job work services where some material is being used by the job worker while doing any treatment on the goods belong to the principals. So not necessarily it always job work services always amount to manufacturing services only. It must be manufacturing services.
Yeah, see, as I said, job work actually requires treatment or process on goods belonging to a registered person. Whether that process or activity or treatment results into manufacture or not is not material for deciding whether it is a job work or not. If you are doing some treatment or process on the materials belonging to a registered person, it has to be treated as a job work, no matter the outcome of that job work is not resulting into a different manufactured goods.
thank you. So the next question is, please clarify at what tax rate the job work is charged and what is the difference between 12% rate and 18% rate under job work?
I think Kuntala has already dealt with this. While he was explaining the schedule, it is relating to whether it's a job work or a manufacturing process. If it is a job work, meaning thereby if that particular activity is undertaken for a registered person, then it would attract 12%. If it is to an unregistered person, it would not be treated as a job work, and therefore the higher rate in the schedule would apply.
Okay, sir. Next question is regarding the same line. My client is a textile processor and receives goods from registered person and unregistered person for processing of the cloth sent by the principal. No exempted activity is carried out by our client. Whether the rate is 12% or 18%, he receives both.
So separate rate of tax will be applicable on separate transaction for each issue.
Yeah, and so the second question is the same query is that secondly, when my client is whether the client is entitled for ITC on inputs used in processing and capital goods in such case?
Yes, the principal shall be entitled to input tax credit on the materials purchased by him and sent for the job work process.
The question is regarding the job worker. He would be also receiving some inputs. Whether the credit would be available for them is providing to.
Yes, he's purchasing in furtherance of business, and those goods are being supplied in the activity to the principal, and he must be charging that amount from the purchaser.
Okay.
So the input tax credit is available.
Okay.
See, it appears to me two things so far as I look at this question, because the credit claimed is also he's asking relating to factory building, which is clearly prohibited under law. Factory building, you are not entitled to the input tax credit. So far as the processor is concerned, he is simply executing a contract of providing a taxable services. Whether the ultimate resulting product is tax-free or taxable, he is not concerned with this, because the processor is simply executing a contract of making a taxable supply of services. And therefore, whatever input tax credit subject to restrictions and limitations provided in section 16, 17, 18, he would be entitled to input tax credit. Whether the ultimate manufacturer in a case of sales of tax-free goods is not entitled to input tax credit is a different matter. But the processor would be entitled to input tax credit.
Thank you. So, madam, should I continue? It's 203. Yeah, madam.
Hello, I saw one question of e-way bill by Nilesh Pathak.
Yeah, there is.
Please ask.
Okay. The next question is, what is the value
Two
to be
queries.
shown in e-way bill by the job worker when he sends the goods after job work back to the principal or to another job work on behalf of principal? Original value as given by the principal plus his charges or only his charges?
Value must be added value of the goods. When the goods are being supplied by the job, sent by the job worker to another job worker, the principal has to raise the challan. So in that case, the principal must be aware what is the value has been added to the goods. That will be the transaction value that should be disclosed, in my view, in
No,
the challan.
but see, what appears to me is from a job worker, after undertaking some process, the goods are moved to another job worker. And the question is, what should be the value in the e-way bill for the purpose of such movement of goods from one job worker to another job worker? According to me, ultimately, e-way bill is meant to ensure and check evasion of tax for the goods under transport. Now, therefore, when he's transporting the goods after undertaking the process, the value cannot be only of the job work charges that he is charging. It has to be of the goods along with the job work charges, because that would correctly reflect the value of the goods under transport. Therefore, the e-way bill cannot be only of the job work charges which he would be charging from the principal, but it has to be of the job work charges along with the material value of the material.
So the next question is, some class of dealer principals are unorganized as well as difficult to maintain job work details, hence doesn't filing ITC 4. What would be the effect of non-filing of ITC 4 and what remarks to be put by auditor in the GST audit report?
According to me, without ITC 04, it won't be accepted as a job work transaction as provided under section 143. Because if you look at section 143, the transaction has to be under intimation to the authority. And by way of provision in the rule and the clarification, it is clarified that filing of ITC 04 will be treated as an intimation to the authorities. Therefore, if you don't intimate the authorities, then how would it qualify as a job work transaction as provided under section 143? Because I don't think whether organized or unorganized, it is advisable not to file ITC 04 when the law mandatory requires that form to be filed in order to comply with the provision of section 143 to the effect of giving intimation to the authorities about the job work transaction undertaken. If you undertake a job work transaction without intimation, it will not qualify as job work for exemption under section 143.
Thank you.
Here, Bhavya Bhai,
Yeah.
we have already closed across the time also.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Nayan Bhai, for an excellent inputs to the detailed input given by Kuntal. Over to vote of thanks, please.
Abhijit Bede, sir, you need to unmute yourself.
Please give
Am
me.
I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon to all friends. I am here to produce a vote of thanks. I deem it a great honor to propose vote of thanks to you all who have supplied help us in making webinar such a resounding success. First of all, I would like to propose a hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest, Honorable Sri J.P. Gupta sir, Commissioner of State Tax, Gujarat, for gracing today's webinar. In spite of his busy schedule, he attended the webinar. So thank you very much, sir, for your very interesting and thought-provoking address. I would like to thank our distinguished chairman, Advocate Nayan Seth, for their valuable remarks and guidance on the subject. I would like to thank our speaker, Advocate Kuntal Parikh, for making excellent presentation and making this seminar interesting and meaningful. Also thanks to Nikita Madam, President of AIFTP, and Mr. Bhaskar Patel, Chairman of AIFTP West Zone, and Mr. Dinesh Tamde, President of GSTPM, for organizing such a wonderful webinar. Lastly, thanks to all participants for their patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dan. Bye. Thank you very
ma'am.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Nan sir.
PC Joshi
Thank you,
sir.
madam.
Dan. Bye.
Thank
PC
you very
Joshi
much, sir.
sir.
Thank you, Nayan bhai, Kuntal bhai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
After, thank
Thank
you so
you,
much.
PC.
I'm